So, welcome everyone. Happy Sunday. I wanted to thank everyone for being here today. This is a short, I'm hoping to keep it within 30 minutes webinar on how to study effectively despite the uncertainty and potential feelings of anxiety resulting from the coronavirus. So, just a little bit about me. My name is Doreen Benyamin. I'm a third year student at Columbia Law School. I scored in the 99th percentile on the LSAT, and I have been teaching the LSAT for over 5 years at this point. I'm talking about these topics as someone who's taught the LSAT, but also as someone who is navigating many of the same issues that you may be coming across, which is how to stay focused despite what is currently a global pandemic, to put it lightly, I guess, or not. Also, so for anyone who might be curious, I thought maybe I'd share a little bit about what's going on at Columbia Law School. I'll just be brief. Basically, it was like almost every single day we were getting another update. At this point, all of our classes are online until the end of the semester. Our graduation is canceled. The law school is actually closing in less than 1 hour, the whole building, the entire school. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. It's not a great situation, but I'm grateful that I get to be here talking to you guys. And I'm grateful, despite the circumstances, to have had this opportunity to be in law school. All right, so let's get started. If anyone wants to introduce themselves in the comments, it's nice to know who I'm talking to. For me, from my perspective, I'm just looking at screens this whole time, and it almost feels like a monologue. So if you want to have some kind of interaction, if you have questions that come up throughout, feel free. And if you see Shannon in the comments there, that's my sister, and she'll be helping me. So if I miss something, I know that she'll see it at the very least. So the first thing I wanted to say is, this is obviously a very difficult situation for so many people, and I don't want anyone to feel like you're forcing yourself to study. So if you find that it's hard to study during this time, that's normal. If you still do want to use the time to study, what I'd recommend is just maybe giving yourself a day or two or whatever it is that you think you need, but just give yourself some kind of timeline to take a break and then come back to studying. But if you do choose to be productive and you want to study, these tips are for you. So let's get started. I have 3 main topics I would like to cover. Again, if there's any feedback, please let me know. So the topics are taking the LSAT, just broadly what's going on with the LSAT at this time. Mindset. Some of you may have heard me talk about that very briefly in the past, but I'd like to delve a little bit deeper. And then potentially having someone who could help you get through this process. So I will go into more depth about that when we get there, but those are the 3 topics I'd like to cover. And so let's get to it. So taking the LSAT. As many of you have already heard, the March LSAT, which was scheduled for the 16th, was canceled. I'm going to share the link actually so you could follow along if you'd like to. But the LSAC, the company that creates the LSAT, shared quite a bit of information about the cancellation and things like that. So if you'd like to read more about it, it's there. The LSAC canceled this month's LSAT worldwide, followed it by automatically registering most students for April 25th. They did mention the possibility of canceling the April and June administrations. They also addressed the possibility of administering the LSAT in alternative ways, including secure remote proctored exam, additional spring or summer administrations, and they also vaguely mentioned other options that would meet evolving public health guidelines. Not sure what that is. And they did mention that they will stay in contact with law schools to expand flexibility on their deadlines. To finish that topic, I just want to say that it's very likely that the April exam will also be canceled just based on the facts of where the world is currently. I don't have anything, there's nothing. I would recommend looking into it if you it's not for sure, so there's no way to know for sure, but that's, given the way that things are right now, that's a very high possibility. I also imagine that law schools will be more flexible on their originally stated timelines, but I would recommend checking with law school websites or reaching out to schools individually. There's no way to know for sure unless you reach out and ask. So that's the first point. That was just the basics of the LSAT, the fact that the March LSAT is canceled and the April and even the June ones are kind of up in the air right now. We're not sure what's going to happen. The next topic is the mindset. So I love talking about the mindset on the LSAT because I feel like not enough of us talk about that. It's not covered enough, and it's a huge portion of doing well on the LSAT. So the truth is, we can speculate all we want, but it's hard to know how things will actually play out. Whether or not the April LSAT will happen, we're not sure. So, as difficult as it might be for us law students or future law students who tend to be type A, including myself, I just recommend not focusing on something we can't control, which is what's going to happen. If you can stay focused on what, creating, like we're not, it's hard to create a schedule given the uncertainty, and I'd recommend just taking it one step at a time. So at this point, for most people, the very earliest you'd be taking the LSAT at this point is April 25th, although again, there's a chance that that will be canceled as well. So what I'd recommend, I'm going to try to focus on the camera. I wrote out a transcript to speak, but I'd rather speak directly to the camera. And yeah, what I'd like to say is, if knowing that you have a month, it might make sense to just create a timeline for at least that month that you have coming up. So if you know, for example, that you have a weakness in logic games and you could increase your score by 5 points if you were to master that section, and that seems like the most number of points in the shortest period of time, potentially that might be how you want to approach it. That's something that I've done in the past when I was studying. I took the LSAT more than once, and between my second and third score, I increased 10 points, and that was mainly just from 1 month of studying. And because I knew I only had 1 month, I took it very seriously and would study 8+ hours per day, 6 days per week, focusing mainly just on the games. And saw, that, so that's what resulted in the 10 points. The only other commitment that I had was a Groupon that I got in on Pilates. So I would just work out with the extra time that I had. So yeah, I mean, if you can figure out what your biggest score increase, where you could see your biggest score increase, it might be, usually what I recommend to people is focusing on logical reasoning because it's 2 out of the 4 graded sections. So that might be where you want to focus on. It really depends. I would just take a second to prioritize. So another thing that I found important is a lot of people talk about how they don't really like the LSAT. They find it difficult and they just see it as like a challenge, but not a challenge, as an obstacle. And I think that it's really hard to do well on the LSAT when you have that mentality. So one thing that I'd recommend in terms of mindset, again, going back to mindset, is making sure that you have a positive approach to the extent that you can. So for me, how I did that was staying curious about how well I could do on the test. So I wasn't sure what my peak score could have been. So what I would do is I'd just keep pushing, and whenever I would get a PT, when I would take a practice test, I wouldn't focus on the score that I got on that practice test. I would just kind of look for a general trend of improvement. And I think a lot of times what happens is people focus on that score on that one practice test, and if they happen to do really bad one specific day, it really throws them off. And people have bad days, and I would just say like that's normal and try not to let that affect the way you approach studying generally. If you could have the mindset of curiosity, I think that tends to be really helpful for doing well. So yeah, and another thing is a lot of people tend to see fluctuations, especially as you get closer to the exam. So don't let that, that's kind of normal because a lot of times people start to burn out because they study more and more as they get closer to the day of the test. And I would just say that means take a break. Thank you, Nick. Honestly, that like one comment means so much to me. He just wrote, the mindset advice is really helpful. Thank you. again, like I'm literally just talking to my phone right now, so to have that feedback is really nice. Thank you. Okay, going on with mindset. So yeah, as I mentioned again, I think that mindset is important. I'm glad to hear this, that it's helpful. And so I do have another point that I've written out on it. You guys are awesome. Jesus wrote, no, keep going, sis. Thank you. I'm gonna keep going. So, staying positive and finding the hidden blessings. So, I think of myself as a very positive person, and I do try to find hidden blessings in everything. So, you know, thanks, guys. Uh, Author LeBoyd wrote, "You're doing great. Thank you." So, here's the thing. Just try to go with me on this. So here's what I have written down. So I often highlight the importance of recreating test day conditions when studying for the LSAT. So usually this ranges from being strict on time limitations to even for me having the same sleep and diet schedule as what I plan to do on the actual day of the test. And something that most people aren't able to recreate and that they find very difficult on the day of the test is the stress and anxiety of test day. Well, thanks to coronavirus, and I'm using humor, but I don't mean to make light of the situation generally. Like I know, people are actually losing their lives because of it, but I'm sure many of us are feeling higher levels of both stress and anxiety, including me. So, if you can stay focused and study for the LSAT during a global pandemic, I have faith in you that you can stay focused and study and not study, but take the exam. So, I don't know if that's at all helpful, but again, if you can use that to your advantage, anything you can use to your advantage. And for me, that's something that I would think about if I was studying for the LSAT right now. I would think, okay, well, if I could get myself to study and stay focused with the world being where it is right now, then I think that I could take the exam and do well on the day of the test. So that's that. Let's keep going. So that's it on mindset. So we kind of talked about finding the hidden blessings, putting your focus on the things you can control, prioritizing the areas where you could do the best or improve the most. So if you just have at a minimum 1 month, thinking about where you could see the biggest improvements, because right now all we know is that there's a chance there's an April 25th exam, so that would be the absolute earliest that anybody would take the exam. Okay, so that's it on mindset. The next is accountability buddy. I don't know how many of you guys currently have one or have heard of one. I am going to shout out my accountability buddy. I have multiple people. A lot of my friends are very, very supportive, and I'm super grateful for them. But I have one in particular that we tend to work really well together, and I'm going to shout her out because I love her so much. Shani. She actually looks over everything that I wrote today to give me feedback, along with my sister. So here's the thing. It's really hard when you're at home, like the reason why a lot of us go to a library. She sent me a message. Love you, Shani. Okay, so the reason why a lot of us go to a library or a coffee shop is because it could be really hard to stay focused when you're just at home on your own and nobody's like, it's the weird thing of like, even when you're in a coffee shop, or at the library, and someone can see over your shoulder that you're on YouTube, you can kind of sort of feel judged. I don't know, at least I do. And sometimes it helps, put you back on track. So it's hard. You're at home, like nobody's looking at what you're doing necessarily, or maybe they are and they're actually distracting you. Could be any of these situations. And so shout out to Shini, yes. So what Shini and I actually like to do, and we did this even before coronavirus, is we will go on Zoom or Skype or whatever it is and study together. And like just having her there, knowing that she is in real time studying, whatever, she's in med school, so she'll be studying for her med school stuff while I'm doing my law school stuff. It's really helpful, it's just kind of, we'll take breaks together, we'll talk to each other, we support each other, we share, our goals. And I think that's one thing, and I'd like to also say, not everybody knows someone that necessarily you might want to have as an accountability buddy. So, feel free to reach out to me. You can DM me on Instagram at Before You Take the LSAT or email me at Before You Take the LSAT at Gmail. I'm happy to try to find someone because I'm sure that there are multiple people here who would maybe find it helpful to have someone else who can keep you accountable. And so I haven't even described what an accountability buddy is, although I've described my relationship with mine. But, and you know, I don't know how to pronounce your name, I'm sorry, but it says everyone needs a Shani in their lives for accountability, and that's so true. But yeah, so basically, the idea is, and she's my friend, so we hang out outside of this, and we have a relationship outside of this, a friendship. But the idea is you can, for example, how it could look like for you is, you reach out to your accountability buddy, and you guys don't have to have similar goals. Again, Shani and I, she's in med school, I'm in law school. It does not matter. It's just the fact that we're studying together. But you could reach out to them, like, let's say the night, every Sunday night, or it could be nightly. You decide, every other day. And you say, hey, like, these are my goals. And the next night, check in and see what you've accomplished. Or what I found to be more helpful is what I've described, where we do work on our goals, whatever it is for that day, simultaneously. So I just have my friend, and it's always nice to have that familiar face. And to be honest, that's something that I've done throughout my studies. Like when I did that 1 month of intensive studying where I was able to study for 8+ hours, which you really don't have to do, but that was my approach. That's how I study best, is like just focusing intensely for a short period of time. But yeah, so even during that time, I had a friend who was living with me, and she was also very supportive. So personally, I found that having the supportive friends is really, really helpful. So if you can find something like that in one of your current friends, that's great. If not, you can reach out to me, and I'm more than happy. I have a lot of time on my hands these days because so many things have gotten canceled. But yeah, you're welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you with someone. Let's see. Yeah, so you could set time to meet each other, stay in touch throughout the day. Okay, so that's the majority of what I wanted to cover is what we've talked about. What the current situation is with the LSAT, how you can have the right mindset or make the most of your mindset, having the right mindset during this time, and having an accountability buddy. Honestly, if I had to say one of them that's the most powerful, obviously I thought all of them were important, or else I wouldn't share them with you, but I really do think that the accountability buddy could be the biggest game changer for us all, because it's just so hard to focus when you're in a room on your own and no one's holding you accountable. So, all right, okay, so I'm gonna end with some basic notes, and I'm happy to answer questions. I tried to keep this short and within 30 minutes, and it looks like we're gonna be done within 30 minutes, so if people have questions, happy to answer. So here are the basics, and I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. When I told Shani I was going to do this webinar, she actually sent me these to include. I didn't even ask her, and she just sent these, which is amazing. So another shout out to Shani, but here we go. She sent staying active, which I 100% agree with. That's something that I did when I was studying. The only other commitment that I had when I was studying for that month, the intensive month, was working out. It's a good way to stay focused, keep your mind sharp, among other things. Creating a schedule, again, that's, standard. That's something that working with the accountability buddy is helpful. Only checking the news like you otherwise would. I think that's really important in this time, because I feel like a lot of us are, really, really checking the news much more than we normally are, because things are changing so fast. But maybe setting times when you're only studying and you are not allowing yourself to check the news, that might be something that you want to do. I think it just can be really distracting to constantly check the news and make you more anxious. Setting up daily Zoom sessions with friends and family. That's something that I've personally also found really helpful, whether it's talking to, my sister or one of my friends, or I've used this as an opportunity to catch up with people that I haven't had time to talk to, and I find that helps me, stay, feel less anxious and feel less stressed. So if that's something that you think might be helpful, that's another idea. Reward yourself. So that's something that I did throughout all of my studying. I would reward myself with meals. I would go out to a restaurant, whatever I felt like that specific day or time, and eat something that I liked. And that, I would have to eat anyways during studying, so it was something I would have had to do anyways. I would just, go somewhere that I really liked instead of maybe eating at home or bringing lunch with me. So, obviously most people cannot go out right now, but if you enjoy cooking, maybe your thing will be cooking your meals. If you enjoy playing an instrument, maybe your reward will be playing an instrument or watching Netflix. Like, it's okay to have those times of relaxation, and I think it helps you do better. Um, so yeah, that's what I'd recommend is don't forget to reward yourself and do the things you enjoyed. When I tutor, that's one thing that I like to tell people is like when you have difficulty focusing, don't push yourself even more and try to brute force it. I'd recommend just actually stepping back, taking a break, and seeing how you could reset and recharge and recalibrate, kind of like what I feel like all of us kind of need in this time. All right. And in closing, in terms of feedback, feel free to comment if there's something that you found helpful in this presentation or from your own experience so that maybe others can learn from your takeaways. I'd love to hear if there was anything that you found useful, although you guys have already shared some, which is awesome. Thank you. And if there are any other topics that you'd like covered, I'm happy to create a presentation and see if that would be helpful for you guys. I'm also open to speaking. I know most schools are not currently in session in the traditional form, but I'm happy to speak to any pre-law organizations or relevant groups, or if anybody has any other ideas, I'm happy to do it. So yeah, I think I'm gonna close there. And yeah, if there's anything I could do, tell me. I'm happy. You can follow me on Instagram. I post like daily, so that could also potentially be motivating, I would hope. You guys are awesome. So let's see if there's anything else. So I just wanted to close with thank you for joining me. I know it's not an easy time, and I hope that this conversation provided some context and tips that you can apply to help you put this time to use. Please, please, please don't be hard on yourself if you find yourself not focusing. I think sometimes all we need is like a moment to step back, realize that this is not an easy situation for anyone, and then you can kind of, slowly get back into it. But yeah, one other thing that I might want to mention that I find helpful sometimes is journaling, and also sometimes meditating could be helpful. Like, there's just so many different things. I know many of you are familiar, I think, with Khan Academy, which has free LSAT resources. They also have free meditation resources, so that's something else that I would recommend. Sorry, excuse me. So I would just, that's another thing that could potentially be helpful. So yep, I think that's it for today. This will be up as a webinar on my channel. I have a bunch of other stuff with interviews mainly of people who are either further along. Oh, Shini actually sent this. A lot about Shini today. You could tell we've been spending a lot of time together. This is what happens when you're in quarantine. What about dancing as therapy? Okay, sorry. Let me just go back to the Shini thing and I'll come back to that. Shini... Shini mentioned a gratitude journal, and I think, in terms of, being stressed out and having anxiety, focusing on gratitude. If anyone's an Oprah fan here, she talks about that as well as something that was life-changing. Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, has also talked about that as something that was very helpful for her, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, having a gratitude journal, which is basically just writing down a few things that are helpful for you, that you are appreciative of throughout your day, that could be something else that you can use as a tool. What about dancing as therapy? Whatever works for you. I think personally, I love dancing, even if it's in my own room, a dance party of one. But whatever you find, whatever you find is helpful for you. All right, so I think that's it. It's just about 7:30. If people come up with questions, Eastern time, if people come up with questions, again, feel free to reach out. And if you want an accountability buddy and are having trouble finding one, feel free to reach out. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great night. And thank you for taking the time to join in on this call.